You spent years thinking your biggest battles came from people, from betrayal, from pressure, from pain. You thought the world was testing you. But nobody tells you the truth. The most dangerous enemy never stood in front of you. It lived inside you. It was the voice that wanted comfort when discipline was required. The anger that wanted control. The fear that whispered excuses. The version of you that sabotaged your own future while pretending to protect your peace. People celebrate winning against others. They applaud trophies, status, and victories they can see. But there's a war nobody claps for. A war that happens in silence. A war where you sit alone with your thoughts and decide whether your impulses own you or you own them. Because the hardest thing you ever did wasn't survive pain. It wasn't losing people. It wasn't carrying pressure nobody understood. The hardest thing you ever did was learn to control you. Most people spend their entire lives looking for enemies in the wrong places. They point fingers at people who betrayed them, blame circumstances they never chose, curse bad luck, and convince themselves that the reason they suffer is always standing somewhere outside of them. It's easier that way. Easier to believe someone else stole your peace. Easier to think the world built walls around your potential. Easier to create a villain with a face you can see. Because if the enemy is out there, then you never have to look in the mirror and ask dangerous questions. You never have to confront the thing staring back at you when the room gets quiet. The strangest part, the greatest enemy you ever faced learned your habits before anyone else did. It knew your fears before you admitted them. It understood your weaknesses long before you called them weaknesses. It watched every failure, every insecurity, every moment of hesitation, and quietly collected evidence against you. It never needed to chase you because it already lived where you lived. It moved when you moved. It listened when you spoke. It sat in silence and waited. People imagine enemies as loud things. Screaming voices, aggressive forces, destruction arriving with warning signs. But real enemies are smarter than that. Real enemies don't kick the door down. They sit in the shadows and make you believe they are your friend. They whisper things that sound harmless. Rest a little longer. Start tomorrow. You're tired. You've already done enough. One more excuse won't hurt. Soft voices, gentle lies, comfortable poison. And that's why people lose. Not because they lacked intelligence. Not because they lacked talent. Not because they weren't capable of becoming extraordinary. They lost because they trusted the wrong voice. The enemy inside you never arrives wearing a mask labeled destruction. It comes disguised as protection. It convinces you that avoiding discomfort is self-care. It convinces you that fear is caution. It convinces you that procrastination is preparation. And slowly, day after day, you become a prisoner without realizing you built your own cell. You know what's terrifying? The enemy inside you knows exactly when you're weakest. It knows the nights when doubt feels heavier. It knows the mornings when your motivation disappears. It knows what pain you've survived and what memories still shake your confidence. It studies every crack in your armor because it helped create them. Then when opportunity finally knocks, when life finally places a door in front of you, that voice appears again. Not to scream, not to fight, just to whisper. Maybe you're not ready. Maybe this isn't for you. Maybe you'll fail. And people listen. They listen because the enemy inside doesn't sound like a stranger. That's the trick. It sounds like your own thoughts, your own voice, your own reasoning. You trust it because it feels familiar. You think every thought in your mind deserves loyalty simply because it came from you. But not every voice in your head wants your future. Not every thought deserves obedience. Some thoughts were born from fear, some from pain, some from years of disappointment and invisible scars nobody ever saw. The world taught you to defend yourself from people. Be careful who you trust. Be careful who enters your life. Be careful who stands beside you. But nobody taught you to question the voice inside your own mind. Nobody warned you that your greatest battle would happen behind your eyes, far away from crowds, far away from applause, in moments where nobody else could save you. Because some enemies don't carry weapons. Some enemies carry excuses. Some enemies carry comfort. Some enemies wear your face. People think war looks dramatic. They imagine explosions, chaos, screaming, and visible destruction. They think battles announce themselves with noise. But the most brutal wars in life arrive without sound. No audience. No warning sirens. No crowds watching from the sidelines. Just silence.
Just you?
Just a battlefield hidden behind your eyes, where nobody can see the damage being done. And that is exactly why self-control feels like war. Because every day, every hour, every moment, there are two versions of you pulling in opposite directions, both demanding control over the same life. One version wants comfort. It wants the easy path. It wants pleasure without effort, rewards without sacrifice, and peace without struggle. It hates pressure. It hates discomfort. It wants to sleep a little longer, delay difficult decisions, avoid pain, and escape responsibility. It doesn't care about who you could become 5 years from now. It only cares about surviving today with as little discomfort as possible. It speaks softly because it doesn't need to scream. It knows human beings naturally drift toward ease. Then there's the other version, the dangerous one. The version built from discipline, responsibility, pain, and growth. The version that understands every meaningful thing in life asks for sacrifice before reward. It knows strength is built in suffering. It knows confidence is earned in struggle. It knows the future is shaped by choices made when nobody is watching. But this version has a problem. It asks you to do things you don't feel like doing. It asks you to move when you're tired, to continue when you're frustrated, to stay focused when distraction feels better, to endure discomfort without immediate reward. And that's where the war begins. Because people love the idea of growth until growth demands pain. They love discipline until discipline requires sacrifice. They love success until success asks them to give up comfort. Everyone says they want a stronger mind, but very few are prepared for the battle required to build one. They think self-control is simply saying no to temptation. They think it's a decision you make once, and then everything becomes easier. But self-control is not one decision. It's thousands of decisions. Tiny wars happening every single day. War begins when your alarm rings and comfort tells you 5 more minutes won't matter. War begins when fear tells you not to take the opportunity because failure might embarrass you. War begins when anger tells you to react, when pride tells you to prove yourself, when distraction tells you your goals can wait another day. The battlefield is everywhere because the enemy never leaves. It travels with you. It knows your patterns. It knows what breaks your focus. It knows exactly how much pressure it takes before you begin negotiating with your own standards. And that's what makes this war cruel. You can run from difficult people. You can leave toxic places. You can escape environments that damage you. But you cannot escape yourself. Wherever you go, your mind follows. Your impulses follow. Your weaknesses follow. The battlefield packs its bags and travels beside you. There are no vacations from it. No safe distance. No permanent hiding place. People wonder why controlling themselves feels exhausting. Because war is exhausting. Constant resistance drains energy. Fighting temptation drains energy. Choosing discipline over comfort drains energy. You are carrying 2 different futures in your hands every day, and both are demanding your attention. One future is built from immediate satisfaction. The other is built from painful decisions and delayed rewards. One version of you wants relief. The other wants transformation. And somewhere inside the silence of your own mind, those voices keep fighting for power, waiting for one moment of weakness, one moment of exhaustion, one moment where comfort finally convinces you that surrender feels easier than resistance. People think destruction arrives wearing obvious masks. They imagine failure kicking the door down, announcing itself with noise and chaos. They believe dangerous things come with warning signs, with alarms, with giant red flags waving in front of their eyes. But real destruction is smarter than that. It doesn't attack from outside. It doesn't force its way in. It sits quietly in your mind and waits. It studies you, learns your routines, memorizes your fears, watches your patterns. Then one day it starts speaking, not loudly, not aggressively, just enough for you to hear it, just enough to sound reasonable, just enough to sound like you. That's the dangerous part. Excuses never introduce themselves as excuses. They arrive disguised as logic. They wear the mask of understanding. They pretend they're protecting you. They sound intelligent, careful, safe. They don't say, "I want to destroy your future." They say things like, "You've had a hard day. You deserve a break. You can start tomorrow. You're under pressure. You need more time." Small sentences, harmless words, tiny whispers that seem innocent enough to trust. And people trust them because they sound compassionate. They sound reasonable. The voice inside your head rarely screams at you to quit. It doesn't need to. It understands something terrifying about human nature. People don't need to be forced into comfort. They naturally drift toward it. Comfort is gravity. It pulls without effort. So excuses don't have to drag you away from discipline. They only have to give you permission to stop resisting. The strange thing is, this voice always appears at the perfect moment. It knows timing better than you do. When you're motivated, it stays quiet. When you're strong, it hides. But when you're tired, it appears. When disappointment hits, it appears. When fear enters the room, suddenly the voice becomes active again. It starts speaking with concern in its tone, pretending it wants peace for you, pretending it wants relief, pretending it wants what's best. Don't push yourself too hard. Maybe you're not ready. What if you fail? Maybe this isn't your time. And slowly, without noticing, you begin negotiating with your own potential. That's how people lose dreams they once swore they'd protect. Not in one dramatic moment, not because of one giant mistake. They lose through quiet negotiations, tiny compromises repeated every day. A little delay becomes a habit. A small excuse becomes a lifestyle. One moment of weakness becomes a routine. And after enough time passes, people wake up surrounded by consequences they never saw being built. Because excuses are patient. They understand they don't have to destroy you today. They understand slow destruction works better. They understand if they move carefully, you'll help build your own prison. Brick by brick. Delay by delay. Fear by fear. Excuse by excuse. The voice creating excuses knows exactly what language to use because it learned from your pain. It remembers every embarrassment you survived, every rejection, every moment where effort led to disappointment. It stores those memories like weapons. Then later, when you stand near another opportunity, it opens old wounds and says, "Remember what happened last time?" Suddenly hesitation feels intelligent. Suddenly fear feels responsible. And people call that being realistic. They convince themselves they're thinking logically, while fear quietly sits in the background, pulling invisible strings. They tell themselves they're waiting for the right moment, the perfect plan, more confidence, better circumstances. But perfection becomes another excuse. Preparation becomes another excuse. Waiting becomes another excuse. The cruelest part is this: the voice creating excuses doesn't hate you. Hate would be easier to recognize. It acts like it cares about you. It wraps itself in concern. It speaks gently. It tells you to avoid pain, avoid risk, avoid discomfort. It sounds like protection while slowly stealing growth. Because growth was never born in safety. Growth was never built in comfort. Growth never appeared after endless waiting. And while that voice keeps speaking softly in the background, convincing you to delay one more time, avoid one more challenge, and stay hidden a little longer, it keeps moving you further away from the person you once promised yourself you would become. People are terrified of pain. They fear rejection, failure, loneliness, pressure, and struggle. They spend years preparing for obvious threats, building walls against things they believe can hurt them. They stay alert around betrayal. They become cautious around toxic people. They learn to recognize danger when it arrives with a loud voice and an ugly face. But almost nobody prepares for the most seductive destroyer of all. Because this enemy doesn't arrive looking dangerous. It doesn't create panic. It doesn't trigger alarms. It doesn't force you into suffering. It offers something much sweeter than pain. It offers comfort. And comfort is dangerous because it feels innocent. It feels deserved. It feels peaceful. Nobody questions comfort because comfort never asks for resistance. It wraps itself around you like a warm place to hide from the world. It tells you to relax. Slow down. Avoid pressure. Avoid difficulty. Protect your peace. And at first it sounds harmless, maybe even wise. Because after all, who wants more stress? Who wants more struggle? Who willingly walks toward discomfort when comfort is waiting with open arms? That's the trick. Comfort never destroys people aggressively. It doesn't attack. It seduces. It convinces. It whispers. It slowly teaches people to love ease more than growth. It teaches people to avoid pressure instead of building strength. It teaches people to escape discomfort instead of learning from it. And little by little, something begins to happen. Not outside you, inside you. Your standards begin shrinking. Your discipline weakens. Your hunger disappears. Your mind becomes softer. Because comfort has a strange effect on people. The longer you stay inside it, the smaller your world becomes. Things that once felt normal begin feeling difficult. Responsibilities feel heavier. Challenges feel larger. Risks feel scarier. You start protecting comfort the way people protect treasure. You avoid anything that threatens it. You stop taking chances. You stop testing yourself. You stop moving toward difficult things because difficult things interrupt convenience. And the terrifying part, most people don't even realize it's happening because comfort doesn't look like destruction while it's working. It looks like safety. It looks like peace. You don't wake up one morning and suddenly become weaker. You don't notice the changes immediately. That's not how silent destroyers operate. They work slowly, patiently. They take tiny pieces over time. One missed opportunity, one avoided challenge, one delayed responsibility, one excuse after another. Then years pass, and suddenly people wonder where their ambition went. They wonder where their confidence disappeared. They wonder why they feel stuck. They wonder why life feels smaller. But life didn't become smaller. Comfort made them smaller. People think suffering ruins potential. Sometimes it does. But comfort has buried more dreams than suffering ever could. Pain usually forces people to grow. Pain creates adaptation. Pain creates awareness. Pain creates strength because pain demands movement. But comfort demands nothing. That's why people stay there. Because growth asks questions comfort never asks. Growth asks for sacrifice. Growth asks for discipline. Growth asks for uncertainty. Growth asks for pressure. Comfort simply says, stay. Stay where things are familiar. Stay where things feel safe. Stay where nothing challenges you. Stay where you never risk failure. And every day people listen because staying feels easier than becoming. The strange thing about comfort is that it slowly changes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone capable of carrying weight. You begin seeing struggle as punishment instead of preparation. You start believing difficult things are signs to turn around rather than signs you're moving somewhere important. The mind adapts to whatever environment it lives in. If you constantly feed it ease, it forgets how to survive pressure. And one day reality arrives without warning because reality doesn't care about comfort. Life doesn't ask whether you're ready. Pressure doesn't ask permission. Responsibility doesn't knock politely before entering. Storms arrive. Challenges arrive. Loss arrives. And when life finally places weight on your shoulders, people discover something terrifying. Comfort never made them stronger. It only made them dependent. Because comfort never wanted growth. Comfort wanted obedience. Comfort wanted routine. Comfort wanted safety even if safety slowly became a cage. And cages become dangerous when people decorate them enough to forget they're trapped. People celebrate battles they can see. They admire trophies, victories, applause, and moments that look powerful from the outside. They respect champions standing under bright lights. They admire people crossing finish lines, lifting awards, and proving themselves in front of crowds. The world understands visible victories because visible victories are easy to measure. People can point at success and say, "There it is." They can photograph it. They can applaud it. They can admire the result. But there's another kind of battle almost nobody talks about. A battle with no audience, no cameras, no applause, and no proof that it even happened. Because some victories happen in silence. Some battles begin in rooms where nobody is watching. Some wars happen at moments where the world sees nothing at all. There are no crowds around you at 2 a.m. when doubt enters your mind. Nobody stands beside you when your thoughts begin turning against you. Nobody sees the temptation to quit. Nobody hears the arguments happening inside your head. People only see your face. They never see the battlefield hidden behind your eyes. That's why winning the battle no one sees is different from every other victory. Because here, there's no reward waiting immediately after pain. No one claps for self-control. No one congratulates you for resisting temptation. No one gives awards for staying disciplined on days you wanted to disappear. There are no medals for controlling anger. No trophies for continuing when motivation dies. No standing ovations for waking up and fighting your own mind. And that's exactly why most people lose. Human beings crave recognition. They want proof their struggle matters. They want signs that effort is leading somewhere. They want visible rewards, because rewards make sacrifice feel easier to justify. But invisible battles offer nothing at first. They demand effort without applause, sacrifice without attention, discipline without admiration. You suffer privately while the world continues moving as if nothing happened. And slowly a dangerous question appears. Why am I fighting if nobody notices? That question destroys more people than failure ever could. Because when nobody sees your effort, doubt becomes louder. You begin wondering whether discipline is worth carrying. You start questioning whether sacrifice matters. You wonder if all this pressure, all this resistance, all this fighting is changing anything at all. The silence becomes heavy, because silence gives your fears room to speak. And fear always speaks confidently. It tells you nobody would blame you for giving up. It tells you nobody would notice if you quit. It tells you one break won't matter. One excuse won't matter. One compromise won't matter. The strange thing is, it's usually true. Nobody notices. Nobody notices when you decide not to study. Nobody notices when you skip discipline. Nobody notices when you avoid responsibility. Nobody notices when you betray your own standards. That's what makes invisible battles dangerous. You can lose for a long time before consequences finally arrive. And because punishment doesn't happen immediately, people convince themselves nothing is wrong. But invisible choices create visible futures. Tiny unseen decisions slowly become identities. Private habits become public realities. Silent battles become permanent outcomes. The world eventually sees what was built in darkness. Because people always want to celebrate confidence, strength, and success after they appear. But they rarely ask where those things came from. Confidence wasn't created on stage. Strength wasn't built under applause. Discipline wasn't born inside comfort. Those things were built during invisible moments where someone decided to continue fighting, despite having absolutely no reason to believe anyone cared. The strongest people you will ever meet usually carry a strange kind of loneliness. Not because they hate people, not because they enjoy suffering, but because they spent years fighting battles no one understood. Years resisting things nobody could see. Years winning wars nobody knew existed. Because sometimes the most important victories in your life happen when nobody is watching, nobody is helping, nobody is cheering, and nobody even knows you're fighting at all. People trust emotions too much. They treat feelings like instructions, Like every emotion arriving inside them carries wisdom that deserves obedience. If they feel motivated, they move. If they feel tired, they stop. If they feel confident, they take action. If they feel afraid, they hesitate. Their entire lives become controlled by emotional weather, constantly changing direction depending on what they feel in the moment. And that's dangerous because emotions were never designed to lead your life. Emotions react. Discipline decides. The problem is emotions are convincing. They feel real because they are real. Fear feels real. Anger feels real. Doubt feels real. Exhaustion feels real. Disappointment feels real. And because they feel powerful, people assume they must also be truthful. But feelings can lie. Feelings can distort reality. Feelings can turn temporary discomfort into permanent decisions. A bad moment suddenly feels like a bad life. One failure suddenly feels like proof that success isn't meant for you. One painful experience suddenly becomes evidence that trying again is dangerous. And emotions are experts at speaking during moments of weakness. Fear arrives before opportunities. Doubt arrives before action. Laziness arrives before effort. Anger arrives before patience. And every one of them speaks with urgency. Do it now. Quit now. Rake now. The walk away now. Because emotions hate waiting. They want immediate relief, immediate comfort, immediate reaction. They don't care about consequences tomorrow because emotions live in the present moment. They care about reducing discomfort right now. That's why people send messages they regret, make decisions they regret, destroy relationships they regret, and abandon dreams they later miss. Not because they were weak, because they handed leadership to something temporary. Discipline works differently. Discipline doesn't ask how you feel. Discipline doesn't negotiate with mood. Discipline doesn't care whether motivation showed up. Discipline understands something emotions never understand. Feelings change. The person who feels unstoppable today may feel hopeless tomorrow. The person full of confidence today may feel uncertain next week. The person filled with energy right now may feel exhausted later tonight. Emotions rise and fall like waves. But discipline stays standing after the waves disappear. That's why discipline feels unfair in the beginning. Because discipline demands movement during moments where emotions demand surrender. It tells you to continue when you're tired. Work when you're distracted. Stay calm when you're angry. Stay patient when frustration wants control. Keep promises you made to yourself even when your feelings suddenly changed. And people hate that. Because discipline feels cold. Emotion feels human. Emotion feels natural. Discipline feels like resistance. Discipline feels like carrying weight nobody else sees. But people misunderstand discipline. They think disciplined people somehow enjoy pain more. They think strong people wake up inspired every day, ready to conquer everything without resistance. But that isn't reality. Discipline isn't the absence of emotion. Discipline is refusing to give emotions permanent authority. Because disciplined people still feel fear. They still feel doubt. They still feel exhaustion. They still feel sadness. The difference is they stopped asking emotions for permission. That's the shift people never see. Most lives are built around feelings. I'll start when I feel ready. I'll work when I feel motivated. I'll improve when I feel confident. But readiness is unpredictable. Motivation disappears. Confidence changes. And if your actions depend entirely on emotional conditions being perfect, you become trapped waiting for weather that never stays. The mind can become dangerous when emotions become leaders. One difficult day can convince someone to abandon years of progress. One painful moment can create permanent damage. One emotional reaction can erase trust that took years to build. Because emotions want relief more than they want growth. And growth has never cared about emotional comfort. Growth asks for consistency when feelings disappear. Growth asks for action while fear remains. Growth asks for effort while doubt keeps speaking. Because there comes a point where the battle inside you stops being about what you feel and starts becoming about who stays in control. when feelings begin demanding power. People spend years trying to become stronger than life, stronger than pain, stronger than pressure, stronger than rejection. They train themselves to survive difficult people, difficult situations, and difficult circumstances. They learn how to endure chaos. They learn how to recover after disappointment. They learn how to stand back up after being pushed down. And somewhere along the way, they begin believing strength is about defeating everything outside of themselves. They think power comes from controlling situations, controlling outcomes, controlling people. But life has a strange sense of humor, because eventually it forces you into a battle that has nothing to do with the outside world, a battle against yourself. Not the version people see, not the version smiling in public, not the version pretending everything is under control. The other version, the hidden version, the one living behind silence, the one carrying fear, doubt, anger, insecurity, and old wounds nobody ever noticed. Because becoming stronger than yourself sounds inspiring until you realize what it actually demands. It means confronting things you spent years avoiding. It means facing truths that hurt your pride. It means admitting that some of the things slowing you down were never around you. They were inside you, and that realization destroys people. Because blaming the world is easier. Blaming circumstances is easier. Blaming bad luck is easier. Blaming other people protects the ego. But standing in front of yourself without excuses, that feels dangerous. Because suddenly there's nowhere to run, no distractions, no villains, no one else to accuse. Just you and every uncomfortable truth waiting in silence. People underestimate how hard self-confrontation really is. They think awareness automatically creates change. They think recognizing weaknesses immediately makes people stronger. But awareness is only the beginning. Because once you see your own patterns, once you recognize your own sabotage, once you notice how often fear controlled decisions, you lose the ability to pretend ignorance. Now you have choices, and choices create responsibility. Suddenly, you begin noticing every moment comfort takes control, every moment anger takes control, every moment excuses begin speaking, every moment fear quietly enters decisions, and awareness becomes heavy because now the enemy is visible.
You know what's terrifying?
Most people can handle pain better than truth. Pain creates sympathy. Truth creates responsibility. Pain allows people to say life happened to them. Truth forces people to admit they helped build some of the prisons they now feel trapped inside. That's why becoming stronger than yourself feels brutal, because strength isn't built by defeating strangers. It's built by defeating habits, defeating impulses, defeating patterns repeated so many times they started feeling like identity. You begin questioning things you once accepted. You question your excuses. You question your reactions. You question your emotional patterns. You question whether your comfort is helping or destroying you, and slowly a strange transformation begins. Not dramatic, not loud, not visible. Because real change rarely announces itself. It happens quietly. You start resisting urges that once controlled you. You start staying calm during moments that used to break you. You stop reacting to every emotion demanding attention. You stop needing comfort every time pressure appears. You stop asking fear for permission. And people around you might never understand the battle happening inside. They may think nothing changed because they only recognize visible transformation. But invisible victories create visible identities. Every moment you refuse old habits, every moment you choose discipline over impulse, every moment you silence the weaker version of yourself, something begins shifting beneath the surface. Because there comes a point where life stops asking whether you can survive the world and starts asking whether you can survive the version of yourself that spent years to keep you small.